Today I'm going to be sharing some facts about Groundhog's Day with you. I know it's a little bit random, but since I've been doing facts videos for all of the holidays recently, I thought I would just continue it for this whole entire year. So any kind of big holiday I plan to do a facts video for. Some soft spoken like this one and some whispered. So I have some facts. I don't know how many are on this page. I think looks like 8 about Groundhog's Day. And then there are some facts just about the groundhog himself. So I hope that you enjoy it. I'll try to speak a little bit slower for you as well. Okay. So number 1, Groundhog's Day is February 2nd, if you didn't know, which is the day that I'm uploading this. Okay, so fact number 1, the Germans started the whole Groundhog Day thing. Yes, the see his shadow or not concept stems from Germany and the holiday Candlemas. Early European Christians believed that if the sun came out on Candlemas, also February 2nd, winter would last for another 6 weeks. I wonder where the groundhog came from. Maybe that's like a springtime creature. Number 2, the groundhog really can predict the end of winter. I wonder how. Just not with his shadow. Because groundhogs hibernate every winter, the fact that he'd bother to leave his hideaway is a natural sign of spring to come. The furry critter is also easy to find. Groundhogs live in the majority of central and eastern U.S., plaguing gardeners everywhere. I do not think I've ever seen a groundhog. There's a picture of one. He's kind of cute. Number 3, Punxsutawney Phil is just a nickname. Punxsutawney Phil has a ridiculously long official name. His full moniker is Punxsutawney Phil, Seers of Seers, Sage of Sages, Prognosticator of Prognosticators, and Weather Prophet Extraordinary. Interesting. Oh gosh. Number 4. The original Groundhog Day involved eating groundhogs. Can you imagine sitting around a table eating a groundhog? I mean, I guess, like, what makes it different than people eating any other type of meat, but it just seems weird. The original Groundhog Day involved eating groundhogs. After sightseers celebrated Punxsutawney Phil's weather prediction in 1886, they all headed over to Gobbler's Knob to dine on a feast made up of various groundhog dishes and equally delicious sounding groundhog punch. Gross. That seems, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but like to eat a groundhog on Groundhog's Day seems like it would be unlucky or something. I don't know. Number 5, Punxsutawney Phil isn't the only weather predictor. A few states use their own groundhogs to celebrate the holiday rather than relying on Phil. Other weather oracles include General Bo Lee of Atlanta, Georgia, Sir Walter Wally from Raleigh, North Carolina, and Birmingham Bill from Birmingham, Alabama. Number 6, Groundhog Day, the movie, looks like it has Bill Murray in it, put Punxsutawney Phil on the map. I've never seen that movie. After the release of the 1993 film starring Bill Murray, attendance to the big event in Punxsutawney exploded, drawing crowds of up to 30,000 people. Wow. Number 7, flipping a coin is more accurate than Phil. The National Climatic Data Center compared U.S. national temperatures from 1988 to 2012 to determine the accuracy of Phil's predictions, and he's only been proven correct 39% of the time, significantly worse than chance. Isn't it funny that even though it's not accurate at all, the tradition still continues? I just find that to be interesting. Number 8, Punxsutawney Phil may know the secret to everlasting life. Loyal fans swear that there is only one Phil and that he's been making weather predictions since 1886. But since groundhogs only live up to 6 years, we're not so sure about that one. That would be crazy if he had lived that long. That's a long time. Okay, now I'm going to move on to 11 facts specifically about the groundhog, Punxsutawney Phil. Punxsutawney. What an interesting name. Okay, so number 1, he's been around since 1887. Punxsutawney Phil has been in charge of telling us how long winter will wear on, and conversely, when spring will finally bloom, since 1887, all based on whether or not he sees his shadow on the morning of February 2nd. If he sees his shadow, we're in for 6 more weeks of winter. If he doesn't, spring will come early. There are no other Phils. There's just the one. I was gonna say, that seems crazy that, sorry, I gotta adjust my pants, that they say that if he sees his shadow, if he doesn't see his shadow, spring will come early in February. That's crazy. I mean, where I live, it snowed in April last year, out of nowhere. So, the weather's all messed up though. Okay, number 2. It's groundhog punch that keeps him so young. Phil stays so young by way of a magical groundhog punch that he's fed every summer at the annual groundhog picnic that apparently extends his life for another 6 years. So even if Phil misses out on 6 annual sips, he's still good to go with his weather reporting and news making for the time being. I wonder what they feed him. Number 3, the Punxsutawney Groundhog Club's inner circle is responsible for Phil. Phil obviously can't get his elixir without a little help, which is where the so-called inner circle comes into play. The Punxsutawney Groundhog Club's inner circle doesn't just hold fast to Phil's meds and administer them to their beloved groundhog. They also take care of Phil for the entire year, plan each year's big ceremony in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, and sport some truly styling top hats and tuxedos at each ceremony. And you can see, that's so bizarre. Imagine that being your dream, or imagine that being your job. Number 4, there are 15 members of the inner circle, including President Bill Dealey, who has been in the circle since 1986. The members all have individual nicknames that vaguely tie into their careers. Tom Dunkel, the so-called shingle shaker, is a roofing contractor. Or weather phenomena, there's an Iceman, a big chill, and even a thunder conductor. when Phil is not predicting the weather at Gobbler's Knob, a rural area about 2 miles outside of Punxsutawney proper, he lives in the town library. How interesting. Number 6. He has a wife. Phil lives in the library with his wife, Phyllis. Yes, Punxsutawney Phil has his own little groundhog wife, and her name is Phyllis. It's almost too adorable to be believed. Number 7. He's a jet setter. Despite enjoying life in the library and doing other groundhog appropriate things, Phil has done his fair share of traveling over the course of his career. In recent years, he has met big celebrities and public figures like Oprah and President Ronald Reagan. Oh, this is interesting about his name. Number 8. He was reportedly named after King Philip. For many years, the groundhog from Punxsutawney was called Brer Groundhog, which doesn't quite have the same ring to it. The official Groundhog Club site says that he was named after King Philip, but odds are that the actual namesake was the UK's Prince Philip. In 1953, Punxsutawney buried a pair of groundhogs. They'd named Elizabeth and Philip after the newly crowned English queen and her husband. Punxsutawney's famed groundhog was first officially named Phil a few years later in 1961, and records show it was a holdover name from the earlier Philip. Number 9. He speaks Groundhogese. It says Phil speaks a special language. It's called Groundhogese, which is what he uses to communicate his shadow finding to the inner circle president, who then announces it to the world. It is interesting. I would like to watch and see how exactly he sees his shadow, because wouldn't it just depend on his position in comparison to where the sun is? Number 10. He was fiercely anti-prohibition. Phil apparently likes more than just his groundhog punch. The groundhog quite memorably announced during Prohibition that if you were kept from drinking that hard stuff, there would be 60 weeks of winter. And number 11, his predictions are always correct, just sometimes misinterpreted. Let's see. So it says, most recently he saw his shadow in 2017 and 2018, but both years had record high temperatures for February. But don't blame Phil. Unfortunately, there have been years where the president has misinterpreted what Phil said. Retired handler Ron Plocha told PennLive, because Phil's never wrong. Phil's prediction is 100% correct, and we blame the variance on the president's interpretation of Phil's prediction. That's so funny. So he's kind of a big deal there. I mean, obviously, he's the star of the whole, what's it called? The star of the whole holiday. So yeah, Groundhog's Day this year is Sunday, February 2nd. And it looks like there's a webcast that you can watch that I would assume shows Punxsutawney Phil. Okay, wait. I found a little bit more information on the start of the holiday. So it says, in early times, well, I'll just read you the whole history. In times of the past, Europeans held a celebration called Candlemas Day on February 2nd of each year. Candlemas Day was originally a Christian celebration to observe Jesus' first appearance in the temple and the purification of Blessed Mary, Mother of Jesus. On this day, people would bring their candles to a place outside of the church and the candles would be blessed. The people would then carry the candles in a procession to the church to simulate Jesus' appearance in the temple. During these early times, people believed that if Candlemas Day was sunny, then winter would last for 6 more weeks, and if Candlemas Day was cloudy or overcast, winter would soon be over. Eventually, the German people also began watching hedgehogs to predict the future spring forecast. If the hedgehog saw its shadow, then there would be 6 more weeks of winter, and if the hedgehog did not see its shadow, it would remain outside, signifying an early spring season. In addition, the bear and badger were other animals watched during this time. When the Germans began to immigrate to the United States, the German people continued to celebrate Candlemas Day on February 2nd, but they came across a problem. As many German people chose to reside in Pennsylvania, hedgehogs were not in abundance in this state. However, groundhogs were everywhere. The German people chose to use the groundhog in place of the hedgehog for the determination of future weather forecasts. That makes sense, okay? So, I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about Groundhog's Day. It's a really peculiar and kind of like outdated holiday, but it's still something fun to talk about. So, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you are deeply relaxed and ready for a good night's sleep. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Good night.